Have you ever felt like you're defending an image of yourself more than your actual self? Think about the last time someone criticized you. Really criticized you, not your work, not a mistake you made, but you. Did you feel a flash of heat in your chest? A need to explain, to correct them, to prove they got it wrong? That reaction, that's not you protecting your life. It's not you protecting your body, or your family, or anything real. It's something else defending itself. Jung had a name for it. And once you understand what it is, and more importantly, what it isn't, you'll start noticing it everywhere. In arguments that didn't need to happen. In jobs people can't leave, even when the job is killing them. In the quiet panic of a birthday, when someone realizes the story they've been telling about their life doesn't quite hold up anymore. Today we're talking about the ego. Not the arrogant, chest-puffing version you hear about at parties. The real one. The one Jung spent a lifetime trying to help people see clearly. Stick around, because by the end of this, you might catch yourself defending something you didn't even know you were holding on to. So let's start with the man himself. Carl Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist working in the early 1900s, and for a while, he was Sigmund Freud's closest collaborator, the guy Freud once called his intellectual heir. And then, they split. Publicly, painfully. Because Jung believed the human mind was stranger, deeper, and frankly more spiritual than Freud was willing to admit. Jung spent the rest of his life mapping the parts of us that stay hidden. He gave us ideas like the shadow, the parts of ourselves we refuse to look at, the persona, the mask we wear for the world, and underneath all of it, holding the whole structure together, or sometimes holding it hostage, the ego. Now here's the thing. In everyday language, ego has become almost an insult. We say someone has a big ego when they're arrogant. We tell someone to check their ego when they're being difficult. But that's not what Jung meant, not even close. For Jung, the ego isn't the villain of the story. It's not even necessarily a bad guy. It's just a character who forgot it was playing a role, and that confusion, that's where almost all of our suffering begins. What is the ego? Let's strip away the psychology textbook language for a second, because I promise you already know what the ego feels like. You just haven't named it. Right now, as you're listening to this, something in you knows that it's you listening. Something says, I am here, in this room, hearing these words. That sense of being a continuous I, that's the ego. It's the center of your conscious awareness. It's the part of you that remembers you had eggs for breakfast, not cereal. It's what lets you wake up tomorrow and know, without even thinking about it, that you're the same person who went to sleep last night. It stitches together your memories into something that feels like a story, your story. And practically speaking, the ego is what makes decisions. It's what says I'll take this job, or I love this person, or I'm going left, not right. Without it, you couldn't function. You wouldn't be able to hold a job, keep a relationship, or even cross a street safely, because there'd be no stable you doing the crossing. So let's be really clear about something, because this is where a lot of people get Jung wrong. The ego is not bad. Jung never said get rid of your ego, like some kind of guru selling enlightenment in a weekend retreat. The ego is necessary. It's the anchor. Without it, you're not enlightened. You're just lost, dissociated, unable to function in the world at all. The problem isn't that you have an ego. The problem starts when the ego forgets it's part of you and starts acting like it's all of you. The problem when the ego thinks it is the whole self. Here's an image that might help. Imagine your psyche, your whole inner world, as a house, a big house, with rooms you've never even opened. Some are bright and familiar. Some are locked. Some you've forgotten even exist. The ego is the person standing in the living room, saying, this is the house. This is all there is. It's not lying. Exactly. It's just only seeing one room. But because that's the only room it knows, it defends that room like it's defending its own life. And this is where things get painful, because when the ego attaches itself completely to one identity, one role, one story, one version of who I am, it stops being flexible. It becomes brittle, and brittle things don't bend under pressure. They break. Let me give you a few examples. You'll probably recognize at least one of these in your own life. The successful professional. Think of someone who spent 15 years climbing a career ladder, their business cards, their LinkedIn, their identity at every dinner party. I'm a director. I'm a partner. I'm the guy who built this from nothing. And then, one Tuesday morning, they get called into a room and told the position's been eliminated. And suddenly they're not just unemployed, they feel like they don't exist anymore. Because somewhere along the way, the job stopped being something they did and became who they were. The student, maybe it's you. Maybe it was you at 17, sitting with a report card, feeling like your entire worth as a human being was decided by a number next to the word chemistry. Grades were supposed to measure performance. Instead, for a lot of people, they quietly became a measurement of value, of whether you deserved love, deserved pride, deserved to exist comfortably in a room full of family. The person addicted to approval online. You know this one. You post something, and then you watch the numbers. You feel the numbers. A comment that says something a little unkind lingers in your mind for hours, way longer than any comment should. Because somewhere along the way, the ego started measuring its worth in likes, in views, in little red notification dots. And that's an exhausting, bottomless place to live. The parent, and maybe the quietest tragedy of all, the parent who spent 20 years being mom or dad first and everything else second. And then the kids grow up, they move out, the house goes quiet, and suddenly, this person is standing in their own kitchen at 6 p.m., the time they used to be making dinner for 4 people, wondering, who am I? Exactly, when nobody needs me. None of these people are weak. None of them are foolish. They just did what the ego does naturally. It grabbed onto something solid, something that gave it a sense of identity, and it held on so tightly that it forgot it was ever holding anything at all. It thought the role was the person, ego, and the persona. Now, if you watched our earlier video on the persona, the mask we present to the world, this next part is going to click into place. The persona is the version of you that shows up at work, polished, appropriate. The you that knows how to shake hands, laugh at the right moment, say, I'm fine, thanks, how are you? Even when you're absolutely not fine. Jung didn't think the persona was fake, exactly. He thought it was necessary, a kind of social armor that lets us function in a world full of strangers who don't need to see our unfiltered insides. But here's the danger. The ego, being the identity-hungry thing that it is, often falls in love with the persona. It looks at that competent, likable, put-together mask and decides, this is who I actually am. And when that happens, the ego stops distinguishing between the role I play and the self I am. It starts believing its own performance. You've met people like this. Maybe you've been this. The person who cannot be anything other than the funny one, even when they're grieving, remembering all the times they had to put on a brave face. The person who cannot show weakness, because their entire self-concept is built on being the one who has it together, and that can be, truly, a heavy burden to carry. The mask stops being something you wear. It becomes something you're trapped inside of, a constant reminder of the persona you've created. 6. Ego and the shadow. This is the part that gets uncomfortable, and good, that means it's working. Because the ego doesn't just want an identity. It wants a flattering one. It wants to see itself as good, reasonable, kind, the hero of its own story, or at the very least, a decent supporting character. But you and I both know that no human being is only good. We get jealous. We get petty. We feel a small, ugly spike of satisfaction sometimes when someone we envy stumbles. We get insecure and act cold to people who did nothing wrong. And we crave validation in ways we never admit out loud. So what happens to all of that? All the parts that don't fit the story of who I like to think I am. Jung said we push them down. We disown them. We shove them into a part of ourselves he called the shadow. Everything we refuse to acknowledge because it threatens the identity the ego is so desperately protecting. And here's the twist, the part that Jung found almost darkly funny. The things we deny in ourselves don't disappear, they just start showing up in other people. And that can be, truly, a difficult thing to confront. That coworker who really annoys you for reasons you can't quite explain? Sometimes, not always, but sometimes, they're mirroring something you haven't let yourself look at. The ego's need to be the good one is exhausting. It's a full-time job, pretending you don't have a shadow. And, ironically, the people who seem the most obsessed with appearing kind, or humble, or not that type of person, are often carrying the heaviest, most unexamined shadows of all. A real-life story. Let me tell you about someone. I'll call him David, though this isn't really about one person. It's about all of us and our struggles with the ego and the shadow. It's about a shape you'll probably recognize, a shape that's familiar, yet somehow still unknown. David built his whole life on achievement, straight A's in school, a scholarship to a good university. He was the first in his friend group to get a real job, the kind with a title that people nodded at, and he worked weekends without being asked. He answered emails at 11 p.m. because it made him feel necessary. And it worked. By 34, David had the corner office, the watch, the apartment with the skyline view that he showed off in photos more than he actually sat and enjoyed. Everyone who knew him described him the same way. Driven, successful, David's got it figured out. But at night, in that apartment, something felt hollow. He couldn't explain it. He had everything he'd worked for. So why, at 2 a.m., staring at a ceiling instead of sleeping? Did he feel like a stranger in his own life? He didn't examine it. He just worked harder, because working harder had always made the feeling go away before. Then his company restructured, and David, the guy who was necessary, the guy who never took a sick day, was let go, politely, professionally, with a severance package and a firm handshake. And something in him collapsed that had nothing to do with money. For the first time since he was a teenager, David had no title, no meetings, no inbox demanding him at 6 a.m., just time, silence, and a question he had spent 17 years running from. Who am I when I'm not performing? He described it to a friend later as feeling like a house with the furniture removed. You could still see the shape of the rooms, but nothing was holding it together anymore. Here's what's important, though. That collapse wasn't the tragedy. That was actually the beginning of something honest, because for the first time, David wasn't asking, how do I succeed? He was asking who is actually asking that question, and that, according to Jung, is the only doorway that ever really leads anywhere. Jung's solution. So what did Jung actually want us to do with all this? Not destroy the ego. Let's be really clear about that one more time, because it's the part people misunderstand the most, especially online, in a world obsessed with ego death as some kind of trophy. Jung wasn't interested in demolition. He was interested in humility, in the original sense of that word, not weakness, not self-erasure, just an honest sense of scale. He wanted the ego to recognize that it is not the whole house. It's the room you happen to be standing in right now. Important, necessary, real, but not the entire structure. Jung called the process of integrating all these hidden parts, the shadow, the persona, the unconscious material we avoid, individuation. It's the lifelong work of becoming a fuller, more honest version of yourself, rather than the polished cardboard cutout the ego prefers to present. And the doorway into that work is almost always uncomfortable. It looks like failure, like rejection, like David sitting in his silent apartment at 2 a.m. It looks like losing the job, the relationship, the image, because it's usually only when the ego's favorite identity gets ripped away that it's finally forced to ask a bigger, scarier, more honest question. If I'm not that, then what am I? Jung believed that question, painful as it is actually a gift, because the moment the ego stops pretending to be the whole self, real growth becomes possible. Not before, only then. 9. Practical reflection. I want to leave you with something to actually sit with, not just watch. Do? Maybe pause the video after this. Grab a notebook if that's your thing. These questions aren't meant to be answered quickly. First, who am I without my job? Not your title, not what you produce. Just who's left in the room. Second, What criticism hurts me the most is not the criticism that's loudest, the one that's quietest, the one that lands somewhere private, because it might be touching an identity you're gripping a little too tightly. Third, what do I desperately need other people to think about me? Sit with that one. It's uncomfortable on purpose, and it may take some time to consider. Fourth, what part of myself do I hide, even from the people closest to me? That's very likely a piece of your shadow, waiting not to be judged, but simply to be seen and understood. And fifth, maybe the hardest one, what would remain of me if my social image disappeared tomorrow? If nobody was watching, if there were no followers, no title, no reputation to maintain, just you, alone, in a quiet room. Whatever's left when you imagine that, that's closer to the truth than anything the ego has been telling you, and it's worth taking a moment to reflect on. So here's where I'll leave you. The goal was never to have no ego. That's not freedom. That's just a different kind of confusion. The goal is to stop being imprisoned by it, to stop mistaking the mask for the face underneath it, to stop defending an image of yourself so fiercely that you forget there's an actual, living, breathing person standing behind it. Because here's the strange, quiet truth. Jung spent his whole life trying to hand us. You are not the job that can be taken from you. You are not the grade, the title, the number of people who liked what you posted this morning. You are not even the version of yourself you like the most. You are the one who's aware of all of it, the one standing in the room, finally starting to notice there are other rooms in the house, and that's a gentle, yet profound realization. And the moment you realize you are more than the image you've been defending, a different kind of freedom begins, one that's soft and quiet, and it may take some time to get used to. Thanks for watching. If this made you think about your own life a little differently, you know what to do, and I'll see you in the next one.